Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside the FLX. I'm Josh Durso, and as always, we are coming to you from the FingerLakes1.com studio in downtown Seneca Falls. Today we have Geneva City Councilor Mark Gramling in studio to talk about some of the exciting news that has come out of the city over the last few weeks. Mark, thanks a lot for stopping by.
Thank you for having me, Josh. It's a pleasure.
So, first off, you were just elected this past November. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your personal history, how you got into politics, and where you found yourself today.
Sure. I was elected previously, just this past November. I'm a native of Geneva, born and raised there in Geneva all my life. I am a son of a preacher man, you know, the song. I've always been involved in my community one way or another, and you know, with ministry and things of that nature. You know, my father always taught me, you know, if you want to see change, you got to actually make change. You can't wait for change to happen, because 9 times out of 10, the change that you envision is not going to happen. So you make the change happen. So, you know, it wasn't that actual methodical, but it, you know, over time, and I just got inspired, and the things that I saw happening in the city, it really, you know, inspired me even more. I actually was approached to run probably 2 terms ago, and at the time I was actually going to school. And so I felt, you know, even though I had the desire, if I'm going to do this, I want to make sure I have the time and things of that nature. So the time was just right, you know, and you know, things lined up, and you know, I ran and won.
Now, speaking of timing,
Yes.
Geneva is in a boom of the sorts right now.
Absolutely.
Some really, really good, exciting news. The $10 million downtown revitalization contest that Andrew Cuomo sponsored, and
Yes.
Geneva was selected. Just right off the top, before we get
Yeah.
into it at all,
Yeah.
talk to us about what that moment was like when you found out
It
that
was,
it was coming.
yeah, well, it was surreal, you know, because you do all these things, and I think it was just, let me not go ahead of myself. So the time that we actually found out, we found out before you know, Cuomo came, and when we all received the email, it was like, is this real email? $10 million, you know? So I mean, but it was like a surprise and things of that nature. So it was so, again, you know, with everything coming together, with all of the things that has been being pushed, and you know, the amazing things that everyone in the city collectively has been doing, it's just like, here you go, you know, this is for you alls, because you've been working so hard. It was, you know, it's like a reward for the things that we have been pushing forward for, you know. So it's surreal. It's almost like you can't put it into words. You know, and it's still exciting because, you know, it's not tangible yet. So, but it's a very exciting thing, you know.
Now, one of the things that we were talking about before we came on here was the efforts that Matt Horn, city manager, had put into this. He's going to be on the show next week.
Awesome.
But just talk to us a little bit about, from your perspective on that city council, seeing him go to work. It seems like the reviews are constantly positive for that man.
Yes. I got to say, you know, Matt Horn is very, very intelligent, very intuitive. He's, you know, constantly surprising, you know, especially a person like me who's never been involved at this capacity, and, you know, learning the folks who are in the game and things of that nature. Matt is seeing the things that he can put together in a clutch moment too. You know, it's like, and it's of course it's not him only, but the team, and the amount of confidence he has in the folks around him, and the building of the team and things of that nature. It's just, you know, it's amazing, you know.
Now, I have to imagine that having someone like that hold that position makes your guys' job considerably easier in terms of the function end. You're about 7 months, little more than that, into your service now. What's that experience been like as a whole?
As a whole, it's a up and down thing
Hmm.
because yes, it's things are and overall, of course, the city is going into the right direction by far,
Hmm.
but of course, as you go and you get involved and you see things and you want to make, I got involved because I want to make specific changes, and as I see certain things where maybe others may not have seen it, I want to try to bring to the table a different perspective that maybe others haven't seen. So I mean, it's thus far it's a roller coaster some days
Hmm.
because of the care that I have, and I just want to be able to articulate and have folks understand my perspective and where I'm coming from, and so and I feel like it's not a cliche for me when I used during my campaign a voice for the people.
Yeah.
A voice for the people for me is a reality. It's really a call greater than an election.
Hmm.
So I really want to be that,
Hmm.
but at the same time, I understand. Being an official, I have to understand all sides. So as we spoke before, balance is really key in this as we go, and as I'm learning, it's very interesting. It's definitely a new experience.
Now, what if you were to sort of on your big board while you were going through the process of
Yes.
running, were there issues specifically that you were thinking about, or are there issues now that you hadn't thought about then that you're saying they've now made it into my, say, top 3 or top 5 things that I really want to work on, or what are sort of some of those big items?
Well, to be honest and forthright, yes, I did have top issues, but learning of the issues as well. You kind of have your cards and you want to put them in the right place so you can have a good hand.
Hmm.
Um, but it's like the big thing with me running, because obviously I'm an African American,
Hmm.
and that was a big deal, big issue, because there has never been an African American involved, right?
Hmm.
So I not only did I bring a new perspective as just being a new person,
Hmm.
I brought an aspect of a culture that has never really been involved or keen to maybe the political realm or governmental realm or just city decision realm,
Yeah.
So as it related to that, inspiration has always been my thing. So, I really wanted to, and I am doing this,
Hmm.
engaging the community. I'm learning even about my own culture,
Yeah.
as I'm going forth. So it's like even in the day that we're in, things that bother people and things that don't, politics
Yeah.
are very, it's touchy
Yeah.
to some people. So people take it personal. So the black and brown communities, I've
Hmm.
learned to call them that, the black and brown communities, I really engage them to give them an empowerment to know that, listen, we can, as a community, come together and not feel like we are on the outside,
Hmm.
and living in a place where we have to wait for changes to come and happen, and opportunities that we see being afforded. We don't have to wait. So I really want to bring that aspect, and those are some of my right now actually top things,
Hmm.
among other things. So I'm like a juggler. I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
always trying to juggle everything together,
Hmm.
and as I go forth, that's one of my big priorities is to bring a totality of a productive society in the city of Geneva.
Yeah.
You know.
Now there is at least one, and I'm sure there's more than one community organization, Tools for Social Change, who
Yes,
seems to be doing some really great work just in terms
absolutely,
of creating some outreach and
absolutely,
giving a little more voice and just trying to bring everything full circle.
absolutely.
Talk to us a little bit about just either your involvement with them or just what you've sort of seen from them that has really uh, made you feel good?
Right. I I'm I have gotten pretty well involved with them
Hmm.
as of late. With being in government, it's tough.
Yeah.
But when I remember my first invitation, and when I first walked into that room, you know, the reason why they got together was because of social issues as it related to culture and things that we see going on in America, right? So
Hmm.
when I walked in the room, I was so thoroughly impressed.
Hmm.
It was like a breath of fresh air, and I didn't know what to expect. So I walked in there, and I seen every culture in there,
Hmm.
and everybody really respecting everyone, giving their stories and giving their thoughts and opinions and things of that nature. And at the same time, uh, you know, they had these subgroups, and those subgroups really dealt with the things and initiatives that folks really care about,
Hmm.
such as food deserts and things of
Hmm.
that nature, and they're trying to work towards those things, bringing values back into the communities and into the neighborhoods, and that really really inspired me.
Yeah.
So I really gravitated to them because
Hmm.
I really believe in a democracy,
Yeah.
a government for the people,
Yep.
by the people. And that's exactly what tools for social change represent.
Hmm.
So it really made me gravitate towards them because of
Now,
that.
I have to ask you, one of the big issues that has been sort of moving through the news cycle on a regular basis over the last about month and a half, I believe,
Yes.
is the five Geneva High School students that were charged with first-degree riot, a misdemeanor,
Yes.
and then they were, just in the last 48 hours, I believe, all offered a plea deal.
Right.
What has been sort of your take watching this unfold,
Right.
um, from the government side, or even just from the social,
Right.
personal side?
Right. As it relates to the children, it's definitely a tough issue because, you know, again, I'm dealing with folks in the community, my constituents, and their feelings, and I never ever want to minimize anyone's feelings, because perspective is reality, really, So it's like I really want to get everyone's perspectives, and when it deals with law, I'm no lawyer, I'm no police
Yeah.
officer, but I want to hear everyone and try to make connections. So when everything went down with all of that, of course, calls,
Yeah.
because let's call it what it is. It's a race issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so and everyone knows this. So whether folks want to say so or not, but so of course they're gonna call
Hmm.
the African American councilman.
Yep.
So and sometimes I say I'm just a councilman, but I really care.
Yeah.
So and folks know that. So as as I it was a learning experience, and
Yeah.
it's a constant learning experience, and some things do surprise me, some things don't surprise me as it relates to the things that are happening
Hmm.
in that particular case. Okay, and these aren't the first times I've heard things in the city about things like this. Okay,
Hmm.
but I'm pushing. I've learned not to uh, be a guy who tries to put out all the fires because I'm going to run out of water
Yeah.
fast,
Yep.
right? So what I do, I've come to this point where I need to hear everyone's voice and try to bring a positive change as it relates to things like this. And this is what I'm doing now with the community compact, who I am head of
Hmm.
the community compact, and I'm looking into like restorative justice,
Hmm.
alternative things for the future.
Hmm.
If we ever have to go through this, because I care, right?
Hmm.
Not because the police were wrong, not because the students were wrong, okay? So, but we know an issue happened, and we know that something has to be done, and we know we're
Hmm.
dealing with children, and when you deal with children, you're teaching lessons, right?
Hmm.
But at the same time, we don't want to destroy lives at the same time. So that's my perspective on it. So,
Yeah.
I'm all about building, never about, destroying.
Now, it's one of those. I mean, you say you're the African American
Yeah.
city councilman, but
Yeah.
you're also a relatively young city councilman.
Yeah.
That perspective, just talk to us a little bit about what that perspective has been like, because there is a sort of far-reaching net where in most government situations at the local level,
Yes.
there is an age group that you
Yes.
typically see.
Yes.
And you are not in that age group. Talk to us.
Okay, so as it relates to the age differences, I think, I as I articulate, I tried to articulate based on, um, the generational thing, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's difficult, right? So because certain generations know and understand certain things. I mean, even
Mm-hmm.
language, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we have different language, and
Yep.
even now I hear some of the younger people that's way younger than me. I'm like, what are you talking about? So,
Yeah.
but articulation and relating to the older generation and where we want to go as a city, right? And sometimes you know they can't see it, and until it really comes to fruition. I
Mm-hmm.
have a father who is very, very old school, and I remember trying to tell him, let's get a VCR. And it took years for
Yeah.
us to get a VCR
Mm-hmm.
because all these newfangled things, why have a
Mm-hmm.
VCR when we got TV,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when we finally was able to get him to understand this is new and innovative,
Mm-hmm.
and when we got it, he's like, oh, why did I wait so long?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so sometimes it's a difficult thing to articulate that, listen, we may be approaching this differently because of generational understanding,
Mm-hmm.
but once we actually get this going and you see that it's a positive thing for the city, whether it brings revenue, whether it brings value, whether it brings, whatever positive change it is going to bring, sometimes those discussions are
Mm-hmm.
tough, but they need to be had, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, discussions aren't always easy, but as long as we come to a positive end result.
How, in your opinion, and how you seem to approach things in a way where you embrace communication, embrace
Oh yeah,
innovation, and all of these really positive things.
yeah,
How do you reach? Because there's a drug problem, there are
yeah.
economic issues, there are
Yes,
seemingly endless for all races. I mean,
yes,
there are just big issues. How do you reach
yes,
the really young generation? How do you reach the high school, the middle school, to
yes,
sort of bridge the gap so
yes.
maybe some of those issues are avoided?
Right. Well, and this is the thing. I believe in really making connections, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a conglomerate of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a big ball of inspiration, right? So, I had the opportunity to talk to the middle school and the high school students, and they look up to me, So even the actual act of going forth and doing something that may have never been done, that alone can inspire the new generation that, listen, if you can do it, I can do it. And I take every opportunity to engage the kids. I love, love, love the kids because, a lot of people, you hear the cliche, the children are our future. But I don't necessarily believe that. I believe the children are today,
Yeah.
right? So the children don't just have to be the leaders of tomorrow, but they can be the leaders of today.
Mm-hmm.
So I really try to encourage the children. I have a belief system where I touch everybody
Mm-hmm.
that I want to affect. So
Mm-hmm.
as much as I can, and much as I can put those connections together and link those chains. I'm only one man, but I try as much as I can to really have a positive effect on the children in so many ways. And it's a constant brainstorm,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah,
So
absolutely. Now, sort of scoping out a little bit, looking at things that are going on in the state and in this country,
yeah, yeah.
what is your sort of impression of how the direction that things seem to be going? Does it concern you? Are you sort of
Yeah.
less concerned? Is
Yeah.
in the middle?
I'm very concerned. and I'm always so open and honest about this situation. I'm very comfortable talking about it, and I think someone has to be, right.
Hmm.
Uh, it's a concern, and because of historical aspects of it and the historical background and what we've seen in the, of course I wasn't alive in the 60s and things of that nature, but when we read and things of that nature and you see, it's almost like there's a proverb that says nothing's new under the sun,
Hmm.
right? So, but I wish this wasn't the new thing,
Hmm.
right? So it's like you see these things, and we hope that before it escalates, it starts to de-escalate, and
Hmm.
at times you hope that you know that we're at the peak of
Hmm.
the tragedies that we see, and I try to have a real balance about it because I I understand, especially being an African American. Of course, I'm in my skin, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I understand both sides. But one thing I have about me is being a responsible responder,
Hmm.
right? You have to respond in order to get things going in the right direction. So,
Yeah.
and what I see in both sides is concerning me because it's getting to a level of a a response that's taking us backwards instead of bringing us forward. So
Yeah.
it's like I think people have to just stop
Hmm.
and take a look within themselves, take a look around them,
Hmm.
because it's very chaotic, right?
Yeah.
So you see it on the news, you hear it on the radio, you hear it's like very chaotic. So you really got to stand still and say, listen, how can we move from this?
Hmm.
But people, I think, get so engrossed in their feelings and if I'm wrong or if I'm right or all of those things that, I've been married for 23 years
Hmm.
and I understand mending relationships.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
Yep.
have to,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes you have to just step back and say, you know what? It doesn't matter who's right or wrong.
Hmm.
Let's work together because we got to live together,
Hmm.
and let's move forward and let's try to talk, dialogue, and bring about solutions.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it's
Now, as far as before we get you out of here, I
yeah,
really
yeah,
want to ask you this.
absolutely,
We'll say 10 years from now.
yes.
What does Geneva look like? What's different about Geneva then to today, whether it be through the revitalization or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be?
Yeah.
What's different?
Yeah. Well, what's different? 10 years from now, I'll be mayor, and maybe not 10, maybe 4. No, um, uh, I see a real change on the lakefront.
Hmm.
Some really great things happening as we see there. It's progressing so much where there's going to be so much more hustle and bustle downtown.
Hmm.
As you see, I don't know if you ever seen, but if you go to, let's say, Arby's, they have the old pictures of Geneva, and then my dad talks about when they had the Captain's Club and things of that nature. I see the hustle and bustle. I see that happening in Geneva. That's
Right.
why I love Geneva. It's an amazing thing.
Hmm.
I can see that going back to that direction, and with the inclusion and with the opportunities, jobs, and things of that nature. I can just see Geneva becoming what we all really envision. We just
Hmm.
don't know
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but all of us don't know. But I really see Geneva being that, place in the destination that
Hmm.
everybody around the Finger Lakes and abroad wants to be.
Hmm.
Yeah,
All right. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to come on today.
I really appreciate you having me.
All right, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back next week with Geneva City Manager Matt Horn and Neighborhood Information Officer Sage Gerling to talk more about the $10 million plan to revitalize downtown Geneva. In the meantime, check us out at fingerlakes1.com or the fingerlakes1.com app available on Apple and Android devices. For Geneva City Councilor Mark Gramling, I'm Josh Durso, reminding you to join us next week on another episode of Inside the FLX.